The massive station hung in the darkness of space like a jewel made of metal and light. Galactic Council Station Epsilon 7 was home to hundreds of species, all living and working together in peace. Today, the Grand Council chamber was full. Every seat was taken. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to watch something historic. Humanity was asking to join the Galactic Council. Jinho Park stood in the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by beings that looked nothing like him. Some had scales, others had fur or feathers. A few were made of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Jinho wore a simple dark suit and kept his hands relaxed at his sides. His face was calm, almost peaceful. He had learned long ago that showing emotion was sometimes a weakness. Next to him stood Hana Kim, a scientist who studied alien life. She held a data pad and smiled at the council members. Her eyes were bright with excitement. Behind them both, Yuna Choi stood with perfect posture. She was listed as a security chief, but her job title made her sound more boring than she really was. The council leader, a being called Vorlan, rose from his seat. His crystalline body caught the light and made patterns dance across the floor. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes. "Humanity," Vorlan said. "You have been our neighbors for 50 years. You have traded with us. You have shared your culture. But membership in this council is not given lightly." Jinho nodded once. "We understand." "Do you?" Another council member stood. This one looked like a massive insect with compound eyes that reflected Jinho's image 1,000 times. His name was Thexara, and he was the council's military advisor. "Your species is fragile. No natural armor, no claws or fangs. You are slower than the Kelthans, weaker than the Draviks. Your senses are dull compared to my people." "That's true," Jinho agreed. There was something in his voice that made Thexara pause. Was it amusement? Vorlan continued. "We have reviewed your history. Your planet is dangerous, hostile weather, predatory animals, diseases. Yet you survived. This shows determination. But determination alone does not make you worthy of this council." Hana stepped forward. Her smile never wavered. "We don't claim to be the strongest or the fastest. We came here to learn, to share, to be part of something bigger than ourselves." "Pretty words," said a council member from the back. This one had 4 arms and skin that changed colors. "But the galaxy is not always peaceful. What happens when words are not enough?" Jinho's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Just for a moment. Yuna, standing behind him, shifted her weight slightly. To anyone watching, it looked like nothing, but to another human, it would have been a warning sign. Thexra leaned forward in his seat. His compound eyes studied the 3 humans carefully. Something bothered him. He had spent weeks reviewing human files before this meeting. There was something in their biology that didn't match their peaceful behavior. Their eyes, for instance. They faced forward, both looking in the same direction. That was a predator's trait. Predators needed to judge distance to catch prey. Prey animals had eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for danger, but humans acted like prey. Peaceful, diplomatic, soft. It didn't make sense. "We propose a delay," Vorlan announced. "Humanity will undergo a capability assessment. In 6 months, we will vote again on your membership." Jinho bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for your consideration. We'll wait for your decision." The council was about to dismiss the session when the room suddenly filled with red light. Alarms blared. Every screen on the walls lit up with the same urgent message. "Emergency transmission from Varos III," a voice announced through the speakers. The main screen showed a terrified face. The being was reptilian, with green scales and yellow eyes wide with fear. "This is Governor Malthus of Varos III. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The Void Ravagers have seized our world. They have taken the entire colony hostage. 50,000 civilians. They are killing anyone who resists. Please, we need help." The screen went dark. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted over each other. Vorlon struggled to restore order. Thexra was already working at his console, pulling up military data. His mandibles clicked together in distress. "The Void Ravagers are a pirate collective, 10,000 strong, possibly more. They are savage, brutal. They take no prisoners unless they can sell them as slaves." "How long until we can mobilize our forces?" Vorlan demanded. "Our nearest fleet is 72 hours away," Thexra said. His voice was grim. "By the time they arrive, everyone on that colony will be dead." "Unacceptable," Vorlan said. "There must be another way." "We can help," Jinho said quietly. The entire chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to look at the three humans standing in the center of the room. Vorlan's crystalline face somehow managed to look condescending. "With respect, Ambassador Park, what could your people possibly offer? You have no military presence in this sector. Your species has no experience with—" "We have a rapid response fleet 8 hours from Varos III," Jinho interrupted. His voice was still calm, but something had changed in his posture. He stood a little straighter. His eyes were harder. "They've been in position since yesterday." "Yesterday?" Thexra's antennae twitched. "How did you know there would be trouble?" Hana smiled. But this time it didn't reach her eyes. "We didn't know, but we heard rumors of Void Ravager activity in the area. We moved ships just in case. We don't wait for permission to help people in danger." Vorlan made a sound like breaking glass. It might have been laughter. "And what do you propose? 3 human ships against the Void Ravagers? They will destroy you." "We're not proposing 3 ships," Yuna spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet but clear. "We're proposing 200 Marines and full tactical support." Now several council members did laugh. The sound echoed through the chamber. 200 soldiers? One council member couldn't contain himself. "Against 10,000 Void Ravagers? This is suicide. No, this is comedy." Jinho didn't smile. He didn't argue. He simply pulled up a data file on the main screen. "This is our tactical assessment of the situation. We can have boots on the ground in 6 hours. Full civilian evacuation complete in 12 hours. Ravager forces neutralized within 24 hours. The laughter died away. Thexra stared at the human tactical plan on his screen. It was aggressive, impossibly aggressive. The humans planned to drop directly into combat zones with no backup, no reinforcements, and no retreat plan. "This is madness," Thexra said quietly. "Maybe," Jinho agreed, "but 50,000 people don't have 72 hours. They barely have 6. He turned to face Vorlan directly. "Give us permission to engage. Let us show you what humans can really do." Vorlan looked around the chamber. No one spoke. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. You have our permission. We will monitor your progress." He paused. "And when you fail, remember that we offered you mercy by delaying your membership. Now you will merely provide an example of why weakness has no place in this council." Jinho's expression finally changed. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "Thank you, Council Leader. We'll try not to disappoint you." The 3 humans turned and walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. In his seat, Thexra pulled up more human files. His mandibles clicked nervously as he read through their history. Wars. Thousands of wars. They had fought each other for millions of years. They hunted animals to extinction. They survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that would have ended most species. They were predators who had learned to smile. And the council had just given them permission to hunt. The council war room was smaller than the grand chamber, but it felt more crowded. Military advisors from a dozen species huddled around holographic displays that showed Varos III in painful detail. The colony was on fire in several places. Red markers indicated where void ravagers had set up defensive positions. Blue markers showed where civilians were being held. Thexra stood at the center console, his many limbs working multiple screens at once. Our fastest fleet will arrive in 96 hours. The second fleet can provide support after 120 hours. He paused, his antennae drooping. The Void Ravagers will have killed or enslaved everyone by then. Vorlan stood nearby, his crystalline body dimmer than usual. Are there truly no other options? None that will arrive in time, Thexra confirmed. Unless, he stopped himself. Unless the humans succeed, Vorlan finished. The words sounded bitter. The door opened. 3 new humans entered, and the room's atmosphere changed immediately. These were not diplomats in suits. The first human was tall and moved with absolute confidence. He wore a dark military uniform with insignia that marked him as high rank. His hair was short and gray at the temples. When he looked at the holographic display, his eyes took in every detail within seconds. Fleet Commander Taeyang Li, he introduced himself with a slight bow. My ships are in position. Behind him came a shorter, broader human. His face had scars that suggested he had survived things that should have killed him. He wore combat armor that looked worn from use. Marine Commander Minho Song, my people are ready to deploy. The third human was younger, female, with sharp eyes that never stopped moving. She wore a pilot's flight suit. Combat Pilot Suji Kang, my squadron is fueled and armed. Thexra studied them. These humans looked different from the diplomats, harder, more focused, and they had arrived remarkably fast. Your ships, Thexra said carefully, were already moving before the attack was reported. Taeyang nodded once. We monitor threat assessments across this sector. When we detected Void Ravager movements 3 days ago, we positioned assets accordingly. That seems aggressive for a peaceful species, Vorlan observed. Taeyang's expression didn't change. Hope for peace. Prepare for war, an old human saying. On the display, another message came through from Varos III. This time it was just audio, screaming, gunfire. Then silence. Hana Kim, who had entered quietly behind the military personnel, closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were cold. How long until your people can engage, Commander? 6 hours, Minho said. 4 hours flight time. 2 hours for combat drop and establishing beachhead. A council military advisor, a being with purple fur and too many teeth, shook his head. Establishing a beachhead against 10,000 void ravagers? You need at least 10,000 soldiers for that kind of operation. You have 200. 212, Minho corrected. And we don't need more. The purple-furred advisor laughed. It was not a kind sound. You will be slaughtered. The void ravagers are not peaceful. They are killers. Each one has murdered dozens. They know no mercy. Good, Suji said quietly. Several council members turned to look at her. It's easier to fight someone when you don't have to hold back. Thexra's mandibles clicked rapidly. Something about the way she said that made his combat instincts scream warnings. He pulled up human history files again, diving deeper this time. What he found made his blood run cold. Humans had been at war for their entire history, not just against other species, against themselves. They had developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They had fought in deserts, jungles, frozen wastelands, and underwater. They had invented hundreds of ways to kill each other and had gotten very, very good at it. But more than that, humans had evolved specifically to hunt. They were persistence predators. On their home world, they would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Humans didn't give up. They didn't stop. They just kept coming, and they had learned to hunt in packs. Commander Lee, Thexra said slowly, I've reviewed your tactical plan. It's unconventional. It's aggressive, Taeyang agreed. It shows no retreat options, no fallback positions. You're planning to attack on every front simultaneously with insufficient forces. Yes. Why? Taeyang stepped closer to the holographic display. His finger traced lines through the enemy positions. Because the Void Ravagers expect us to be cautious. They expect us to follow standard military doctrine. They're wrong. He looked at Thexra directly. We're not going to fight them. We're going to hunt them. The word hung in the air like a threat. Vorlon moved closer to the display. Explain. Minho stepped forward and began manipulating the hologram, showing different attack vectors. Void Ravagers rely on overwhelming force and fear tactics. They're strong individually, but they don't coordinate well. They're essentially a mob with weapons. So you'll use superior tactics, the Purple Advisor said. That's still not enough against such numbers. We'll use what we're good at, Hana interjected. She pulled up biological data on the screen. Humans evolved on a death world. Gravity slightly higher than most inhabited planets. Oxygen levels that would be toxic to many species. Predators everywhere. We survived by being adaptable, persistent, and cooperative. She changed the display to show human physiology. We can regulate our body temperature. We can survive in extreme heat and cold. We heal quickly. We can go days without sleep and weeks without food. And most importantly, she paused. We don't give up. Yuna had been silent until now. You asked what makes humans dangerous. I'll tell you, most species, when they're tired, they rest. When they're injured, they retreat. When they're outnumbered, they surrender. Humans don't. We keep fighting until we win or we die. That's foolish, Vorlon said. Maybe. Jinho had entered the room without anyone noticing. His diplomatic suit was gone. He now wore combat gear. But it kept us alive for millions of years. Thexra's antennae drooped further. You're all going? The entire diplomatic team? We're not just diplomats, Jinho said simply. We're human. When our people are in danger, we fight. When other people are in danger, he smiled that unsettling smile again. We fight harder. The Purple Advisor shook his head. This is insanity. The Council should stop this. We're sending them to die. The Council gave us permission, Taeyang reminded him, and we're going whether you approve or not. Those people down there don't have time for debates. Suji checked her wrist display. We launch in 30 minutes. Any Council members who want to watch can link to our combat feeds. We're going to broadcast everything. Vorlon's crystalline face somehow looked skeptical. Why would you broadcast your mission? If you fail, everyone will witness your defeat. When we succeed, Minho corrected. Everyone will witness what happens when you threaten innocent people and humans show up. The humans began to file out of the war room. At the door, Jinho turned back to face the council members. You've spent weeks evaluating whether we're worthy to join your council. You've studied our history, our biology, our culture, but you only looked at what we wanted you to see. His expression hardened. Now you'll see what we really are. After the humans left, the war room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Thexra spoke quietly. I recommend all council members watch the combat feeds. Why? Vorlon asked. Because I've read their history. I've studied their evolution, and I think I understand now what we've invited into our galaxy. Thexra's compound eyes reflected the hologram's light in 1,000 different directions. We thought they were prey, pretending to be predators. We were wrong. They're predators who learn to pretend to be prey. Vorlon considered this. Surely you're exaggerating. Thexra pulled up a final image on the display. It showed human evolution, from small creatures hiding in trees to the beings who now walked their station. Their ancestors survived by learning to hunt in packs. They developed tools. They learned to throw projectiles with deadly accuracy. They domesticated wolves, other predators, and made them into pets. They hunted animals twice their size into extinction. He paused. And then, when they ran out of large prey, they started hunting each other. The purple advisor leaned closer to the display. Then why did they become peaceful? That's what terrifies me, Thexra said softly. They didn't become peaceful because they evolved past violence. They became peaceful because they chose to. His mandibles clicked nervously. And choice can be changed. Vorlan was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke to the room. Link all council members to the human combat feeds. Let everyone watch. We need to understand what we're dealing with. The displays updated. Soon every council member would have access to live footage from human combat cameras. In 6 hours, they would understand exactly what humanity was capable of. The countdown had begun. The council observation deck was packed. Representatives from 200 species crowded around holographic displays, all showing different feeds from the human operation. Some council members had dismissed it as foolish bravery. Others came to witness what they assumed would be a disaster. A few, like Thexra, came because they suspected something the others didn't. The main display showed the view from Commander Taeyang's ship as it approached Varos III. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, blue and green with white clouds. But the infrared overlay revealed fires burning across the main colony site. "Human forces entering atmosphere," an automated voice announced. Vorlan stood at the front of the observation deck, his crystalline body reflecting the light from dozens of screens. "They're not using stealth approach," he noted. "The Void Ravagers will see them coming." "I think that's the point," Thexra said quietly. The dropships descended through the atmosphere like falling meteors. Alarms blared on the Void Ravager command frequency, which the Council had tapped into. "Incoming ships! Multiple targets! Prepare defensive positions!" On the screens, Suji's fighter squadron broke off from the main group. 12 small craft that moved with impossible grace. The Void Ravagers had anti-aircraft weapons positioned around the colony. They opened fire, filling the sky with explosions and tracer rounds. A council member gasped. "They're flying directly through the defensive fire. They'll be shot down." But they weren't. The human fighters weaved through the barrage like fish swimming through water. One craft took a hit that would have destroyed most ships. It wobbled, recovered, and kept flying. Suji's voice came over the combat feed, calm and clear. "Squadron, execute pattern Delta. Clear the landing zones." The fighters dove toward the Ravager positions. They didn't pull away. They didn't retreat. They accelerated directly at the enemy guns. At the last moment, they fired their weapons and banked hard. Explosions bloomed across the ground. "Impossible," the purple-furred advisor whispered. "The G-forces from those maneuvers should have killed the pilots." "Humans can withstand higher G-forces than most species." Hana's voice came through the feed. She was aboard one of the dropships, monitoring biological data. "We evolved with higher gravity. Our bodies are built to endure stress." The dropships came in next. Instead of finding safe landing zones away from the enemy, they descended directly into the middle of Ravager territory. The doors opened while the ships were still 10 meters off the ground, and humans jumped out. They didn't wait. They didn't form defensive positions. They just started moving. The Council watched as 212 humans spread out across the combat zone with practiced efficiency. They moved fast, faster than the Ravagers expected. Some went high, climbing ruined buildings. Others went low, disappearing into drainage systems. A few simply ran straight forward. "Contact!" Minho's voice barked over the command channel. "Engaging hostiles!" The camera feeds became chaotic, flashes of gunfire, rapid movement, the sound of weapons fire mixed with shouts in both human and alien languages. One feed showed a human called Dongwu Shin. He was on a rooftop with another Marine, both carrying long-barreled rifles. Dongwu moved with absolute calm, like he was doing something routine. He aimed, fired, and a Ravager fell 200 meters away. He shifted position, aimed, fired. Another target down. "Sniper Team Alpha," Dongwu reported in a flat voice. 17 targets neutralized. Moving to position 2. Less than 5 minutes had passed. Another feed showed a human named Nari O moving through the colony's underground tunnels. She was small, quick, and carried devices that looked like they belonged in a science lab, not a battlefield. She planted something on a wall, pressed a button, and kept moving. 30 seconds later, the wall exploded. Through the hole came screaming Ravagers, weapons ready. But Nari was already gone, 3 turns ahead of them in the maze of tunnels. "Infiltration team," Nari's voice was barely above a whisper. "Enemy command structure located. Beginning disruption protocol." Vorlan leaned forward. "What is disruption protocol?" The answer came in the form of explosions. Multiple blasts ripped through a large building that the Ravagers had been using as their headquarters. The structure collapsed in on itself. "She destroyed their command center," Thexera said, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "She infiltrated it and destroyed it, alone." "Not alone," another voice corrected. The feed switched to show 3 more humans emerging from the rubble. They had been inside when it collapsed. They looked dusty, but unhurt. The Ravagers were beginning to panic. Council members could hear it in their communications. "They're everywhere. I can't get a count. How many are there?" "They shot Krevin from half a kilometer away. How is that possible?" Fall back to secondary positions." But there were no safe positions. Everywhere the Ravagers retreated, humans were already there, waiting. It was like the humans could predict every move. One feed showed a group of Ravagers trying to use civilians as shields. They dragged 5 colonists out of a building and lined them up, weapons to their heads. "Human forces, if you continue your attack, we will execute the hostages," the Ravager leader shouted. There was a long moment of silence. The council members held their breath. Then a single shot rang out. The Ravager leader dropped, a neat hole in his head. Before the other Ravagers could react, more shots followed in rapid succession. 5 shots, 5 dead Ravagers. The hostages were unharmed. Dongwu's voice came over the channel, emotionless. "Hostage situation resolved. No civilian casualties." A council member made a choking sound. He shot 5 targets in less than 3 seconds, around hostages, without hitting any civilians. "Humans have excellent hand-eye coordination," Hana's voice explained, "and patience. We can hold perfectly still for hours if needed. It's how our ancestors hunted." The battle had been raging for 6 hours now. Most species would have been exhausted. The humans showed no signs of slowing down. Another feed showed a human medic named Junho Bai. He was treating a wounded colonist, his hands steady as he worked. Ravagers appeared at the end of the street. Without looking up from his patient, Junho spoke into his comm. "Need support my position." Within seconds, 3 human Marines appeared, weapons raised. The Ravagers retreated. "Medic stations are sacred," Junho said calmly, still working on the colonist. "We defend them." 12 hours into the operation, the council started seeing something that disturbed them even more than the efficient violence. The humans weren't just fighting, they were hunting. Dongwu would fire from a position, then move before return fire arrived. He would fire again from somewhere new. He never stayed in one place. He never stopped moving. His targets weren't random. He was systematically eliminating every Ravager leader he could find. Nari wasn't just planting explosives. She was destroying supply lines, communication hubs, and escape routes. Every action served multiple purposes. Minho's Marines didn't charge blindly. They moved like a living organism, each part supporting the others. When one team engaged the enemy, another was already flanking. When they pushed forward, they left no gaps for the enemy to exploit. "This isn't how battles work," the purple advisor said. He sounded shaken. This is extermination." "No," Thexra corrected quietly. "This is hunting. Efficient, patient, relentless hunting." 18 hours into the operation, the Ravagers' communications became desperate. "They don't stop. We killed 3 of them and they just kept coming. Send reinforcements to Section 7. Wait, they're already here. How are they everywhere? I need to rest. We've been fighting for 18 hours. Rest? They haven't stopped once." Vorlon turned to Hana's feed. "Why aren't your people resting? Surely they need to sleep." Hana's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but alert. "Humans can go 3 days without sleep if necessary. We've been training for scenarios like this our entire lives. Every human learns basic combat skills. Every human learns to push past exhaustion." She paused. "We're persistence predators, Council Leader. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't stop until the job is done." A new feed showed Suji's squadron still flying. They had been in the air for 18 hours straight, providing cover and close air support. Other species' pilots would have needed relief long ago. "How are they still flying?" a council member asked. "Rotation sleep," Suji's voice came through. "My co-pilot flies while I rest for 20 minutes. Then we switch. We can keep this up for days if needed." The Void Ravagers began attempting to retreat to their ships. But when they reached the landing zones, they found humans already there. Yuna Choi stood with a squad of Marines, weapons raised. "Drop your weapons," Yuna ordered. Her voice was iron. "You can't stop all of us," a Ravager shouted. "We outnumber you 20 to 1. "Yes," Yuna agreed. "But we're better. Drop your weapons or we drop you." 22 hours into the operation, the Ravager communications went silent. The Council observation deck was quiet as well. 200 species watched the feeds in stunned silence. On the ground, Minho was making a final count. 9,247 Ravagers neutralized or captured, 89 escaped, all civilians secured and receiving medical treatment. "Human casualties?" Vorlan asked quietly. 12 wounded. 0 dead, Minho reported. "We'll all be combat ready again within 48 hours. The numbers didn't make sense. 200 humans against 10,000 Ravagers. The humans should have been slaughtered. Instead, they had won decisively. Thexera pulled up more human history files and shared them on the main display. Images of humans throughout their evolution, hunting, fighting, surviving, thriving. "They domesticated wolves," he said to the silent room. "Apex predators. They turned them into pets. They hunted mammoths to extinction. They survived ice ages. They crossed oceans on wooden boats. They went to war with each other for thousands of years and kept getting better at it." His voice was hollow. "And now they've learned to cooperate. Predators who hunt in packs, with technology and tactics and patience." Vorlon's crystalline body had lost most of its glow. "What have we done?" "You gave them permission to hunt," Thexera said simply. "And now, everyone in the galaxy is going to know what that means." The battle was entering its final phase, and the galaxy was watching. News of the human operation had spread. Hundreds of species were now linked to the feeds, watching in real time as 200 humans systematically dismantled a force 50 times their size. On the colony surface, Commander Tai Yang stood in what had been the Ravager's main defensive position. Around him, his tactical team worked with quiet efficiency. A human named Yongsun An coordinated multiple operations simultaneously, speaking calmly into his communicator while monitoring 3 holographic displays at once. "Team 7, redirect to Sector 4. Team 12, hostage extraction complete. Move to support Team 3. Air support. We need eyes on the northern perimeter." Yong-sun never raised his voice. He didn't need to. In orbit, the Council observation deck had doubled in size. More representatives kept arriving, refusing to believe the reports until they saw the feeds with their own eyes. "This is the final push," Thexra explained to the assembled council members. "The Ravagers are attempting a full retreat. They want to reach their ships and escape." "Will the humans let them go?" a council member asked. The answer came quickly. Minho's voice cut through the command channel, hard and cold. "All units, execute containment protocol. No Ravager reaches orbit. Repeat, no one escapes." A new human appeared on one of the feeds. Yoonji Park was bigger than most humans, and she carried a weapon that looked too large for one person to handle. She stood in the middle of a street that led to the Ravager landing zones. Behind her, two other humans set up equipment that resembled artillery. "Heavy weapons team in position," Yoonji reported. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. "Ready to close the door." The first wave of Ravagers came running down the street, desperate to reach their ships. There were hundreds of them, firing wildly in all directions. Yoonji didn't run. She didn't take cover. She simply raised her weapon and fired. The weapon made a sound like thunder. The entire street exploded. When the smoke cleared, the Ravagers were gone, and a crater marked where they had been. "Door closed," Yoonji said. "Next?" Council members watched in horror as this scene repeated across the colony. Every escape route the Ravagers tried to use was blocked, not by massive armies, by small teams of humans who refused to let anyone pass. Another feed showed a human called Seokjin Woo. He sat in a communications center, surrounded by equipment. He was broadcasting on all Ravager frequencies. "Attention, Void Ravagers!" Seokjin's voice was soft, almost kind. It made what he said next even more chilling. "You came here to hunt. You took civilians hostage. You murdered innocent people. Now you understand how prey feels. Now you understand fear." He paused. "We are humanity. We remember every wrong. We track every predator, and we never, ever stop." In the observation deck, a council member turned to Hana. "Is that true? Do humans really never forget?" Hana's expression was difficult to read. "We have a saying, forgive but don't forget. We can choose peace, but we remember every lesson we learned in war." She gestured to the screens. "Every tactic you see today comes from thousands of years of conflict. We documented everything. We studied it. We got better." The Ravagers were breaking. Their communications showed panic and desperation. "They're behind us." "How? We just checked that area." "I'm out of ammunition. I've been fighting for a day straight." "They're not tired. Why aren't they tired?" One group of Ravagers finally surrendered. They threw down their weapons and raised their hands. Human Marines appeared, weapons trained on the captives, but they didn't shoot. "On your knees," a Marine ordered. The Ravagers complied, expecting to be executed. Instead, Junho Bei approached with his medical kit. He examined the Ravagers, checking for injuries. When he found one with a bleeding wound, he treated it. "Why are you helping me?" the Ravager asked, confused. "We're your enemies." Junho finished bandaging the wound and looked the Ravager in the eye. "The battle's over. You surrendered. Now you're a prisoner, and prisoners have rights. We don't torture. We don't execute prisoners. That's what separates us from you." In the observation deck, Vorlan's voice was quiet. "They show mercy? After everything the Ravagers did?" "Selective mercy," Thexra corrected. "Watch." Another feed showed a different group of Ravagers. These ones had been caught with civilian prisoners. Minho stood before them, his expression carved from stone. "You used children as shields," Minho said flatly. "You murdered unarmed civilians." "We surrender," the Ravager leader shouted. "You have to accept our surrender." "I do accept it," Minho agreed. "But surrender doesn't erase what you did. You'll face trial. You'll answer for every life you took. And if we find you guilty, you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell." He turned to his Marines. Separate them. Document every crime. These ones don't get mercy. They get justice. The distinction was clear. Ravagers who had fought soldiers were treated fairly. Ravagers who had harmed civilians were shown no kindness. 24 hours into the operation, it was essentially over. The few remaining Ravagers were either surrendering or fleeing into the wilderness, where human tracking teams were hunting them down one by one. Dongwu's team had been tracking a small group for 3 hours. They followed footprints, broken branches, and disturbed dirt. The Ravagers had a 2-hour head start. It didn't matter. They're slowing down, Dongwu observed, reading the signs. Getting tired. We'll have them in another hour. His partner looked at him. We've been awake for 30 hours. Aren't you tired? Yes, Dongwu said simply. But they're more tired. That's how this works. They found the Ravagers collapsed under a tree, too exhausted to run anymore. They surrendered without resistance. In the colony center, Yongsun was coordinating the final operations. 3 simultaneous strikes to secure the last Ravager holdouts. The teams moved with the same precision they had shown from the start. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just efficient, practiced violence. The last Ravager stronghold fell at the 26-hour mark. All zones secure, Yongsun reported. Colony is clear. Beginning full civilian medical assessment and infrastructure repair. The council observation deck erupted in noise. Some representatives were arguing. Others were silent, staring at the screens in disbelief. A few were clearly frightened. Vorlon called for quiet. It took several minutes to restore order. The final numbers, Thexra announced, his voice cutting through the remaining chatter. 9,427 Void Ravagers captured or neutralized. 63 escaped. 50,000 colonists secured, all alive. Infrastructure damage minimal. Human casualties. 12 wounded currently being treated. 0 dead. The silence that followed was absolute. It's impossible, the Purple Advisor said weakly. The numbers don't make sense. They make perfect sense, Thexera countered. We just didn't understand what we were looking at. He displayed human biological data on the main screen. Superior endurance, excellent hand-eye coordination, adaptability, tool use, pack tactics, pattern recognition, strategic thinking, and most importantly, he paused, the psychological warfare. What do you mean? Vorlan asked. Thexera played back Seokjin's broadcast. He didn't threaten them with death. He threatened them with being hunted. He made them feel like prey. For a species like the Ravagers, who pride themselves on being apex predators, that's devastating. He broke their morale before the fighting even started. Another council member spoke up. But humans don't have natural weapons. They're not the strongest or the fastest. No, Thexera agreed. But they don't need to be. They invented weapons. They developed tactics. They learned to cooperate across genetic lines, something most species never achieve. And most crucially, he highlighted a section of human evolutionary history. They spent millions of years learning to outsmart prey that was bigger, faster, and stronger than them. They became ambush predators, persistence predators, pack hunters. They became the most successful predator their planet has ever produced. Hana's voice came through the feed. She was on the colony surface now, helping treat wounded civilians. You asked what makes humans worthy of the Council. You wanted to see capability. Well, you've seen it. But you're missing the most important part. What's that? Vorlan asked. The feed switched to show Junho treating a wounded Ravager prisoner with the same care he had given to a colonist child moments before. Nearby, Suji was sharing her food rations with a group of refugees. Dongwu, the sniper who had killed dozens of Ravagers, was helping rebuild a collapsed home. We're predators, Hana said quietly, but we're also caregivers. We evolved empathy along with hunting skills. We can be brutal when we need to be, but we choose to be kind when we can be. That's what makes us human. On another feed, Nari was playing with a small alien child who had been orphaned in the attack. The same human who had infiltrated an enemy command center and destroyed it was now making the child laugh. Yuna appeared on a feed, speaking with colonial authorities. "We'll leave a security detachment until council forces arrive. We'll also leave medical personnel and engineers. Rebuilding will take time." "You're staying?" the colonial governor asked, surprised. "After everything, you're staying to help?" "Of course," Yuna said, as if it was obvious. "The fighting is over. Now comes the healing." In the observation deck, council members began to understand. Humans weren't just warriors. They were nurses and builders and teachers and engineers. They could switch from deadly combat to compassionate care in an instant. It was this duality that made them truly terrifying. A predator you could understand, a caregiver you could trust, but a species that could be both depending on what was needed? That was something new. Vorlon turned to Thexra. "Your assessment?" Thexra's compound eyes reflected the screens showing humans working to save the very people the council had given up for dead. "They're not a prey species pretending to be predators," he said slowly. "They're apex predators who learned compassion. They're the most dangerous kind of ally and the worst possible enemy. They can love you or hunt you, and they're excellent at both." The observation deck fell silent again as everyone watched the feeds, finally understanding what they had witnessed. Humanity's predator mode had been unleashed, and now the galaxy would never see them the same way again. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council reconvened in their grand chamber, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Where before there had been casual dismissal and condescension, now there was cautious respect. The council members who had laughed at the humans sat quietly in their seats. Those who had doubted were silent. The chamber was more crowded than usual. Representatives from the rescued colonists had been invited to attend. 50,000 civilians from a dozen species, all alive because of human intervention. Jinho Park stood in the center of the chamber once again. This time, he wasn't wearing a diplomatic suit. He wore his combat gear, still dusty from the battle. He had refused to change, and no one had asked him to. Behind him stood Hana, Yuna, Taeyang, Minho, and Suji. They looked tired but alert. Vorlon rose from his seat. His crystalline body glowed brighter than before, but there was something different in his stance. Humility, perhaps. "Ambassador Park," Vorlon began, and his voice no longer held the condescending tone from before. "The Council has reviewed the operation on Varos 3rd, the recordings, the casualty reports, the testimonies." He paused. "We were wrong about humanity." "You were scared," Jinho corrected gently. "There's a difference." A murmur went through the chamber. No one spoke to the council leader that way, but Vorlon didn't take offense. He simply nodded. "Perhaps you're right. We saw your biology, your history, your capacity for violence, and we dismissed it because you chose peace. We thought peace meant weakness." "It doesn't," Jinho said. "Peace is a choice. Weakness is a lack of options. We had options. We chose peace, until peace wasn't enough." The colonial governor of Varos III stood up. She was a reptilian being with green scales and wise old eyes. "I wish to address the council." Vorlon gestured for her to speak. 3 days ago, my world was dying. The council told us help would arrive in 72 hours. We knew we would all be dead long before then. We had given up hope. Her voice broke slightly. Then the humans came. Not in 3 days. Not in 1 day. In 6 hours. 200 soldiers against 10,000 enemies. The council's military advisors said it was suicide. She turned to look directly at the human delegation. They were wrong. In 26 hours, the humans had saved every single person on my world. They fought without rest. They showed no mercy to our enemies, but they showed compassion to prisoners. They stayed after the battle to help us rebuild. She faced the council again. If humanity asks for membership, I vote yes. I owe them the lives of everyone I love. More colonists stood up. A crystalline being who had been rescued from a Ravager prison camp. An insect-like creature whose children had been saved by Junho's medical team. A being made of energy who had watched Suji's squadron fly impossible maneuvers to protect civilians. One by one they spoke. All of them said the same thing. Yes. Humanity deserved membership. Thexra stood next. I have spent the last 3 days reviewing every minute of combat footage. I have analyzed human tactics, biology, and psychology. I have also reviewed testimonies from the Ravager prisoners. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Ravagers call the humans demons. They say humans don't fight like any species they've encountered. They say humans hunt like they can read minds. We can't read minds, Minho said from his position behind Jinho. We read patterns, behavior. We predict what you'll do because we've spent millions of years learning to predict what prey will do. Exactly, Thexra agreed, and that terrifies them. It should terrify all of us. He paused. But it should also reassure us, because humanity could have killed every single Ravager. Instead, they captured 4,000 of them alive. They treated their wounds. They followed the rules of war, even when their enemies did not. He turned to face Jinho directly. You asked us to see what humans really are. Now we have. You are predators with the wisdom to be guardians. You are warriors with the compassion to be healers. You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy and the most trustworthy. The purple-furred advisor who had mocked humanity before now stood as well. He looked uncomfortable. I was wrong. I said you would be slaughtered. I laughed at your confidence. He bowed his head slightly. I apologize. Humanity has proven its capability beyond any doubt. Vorlan raised his hands, calling for silence. The Council will now vote on humanity's full membership. He looked around the chamber. All in favor? Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage rose. Every single one. The vote is unanimous, Vorlan announced. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Jinho bowed his head in acknowledgement. Thank you. We're honored to join you. There is one more matter, Thexra said. The Council's Rapid Response Force needs a commander. Someone with experience in quick-strike operations, someone who can coordinate multiple species, someone who has proven they can win against impossible odds. He looked at Taiyang. Commander Lee, would you accept this position? The chamber went quiet, waiting for Taiyang's response. He was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but no. Surprise rippled through the council. Why not? Vorlan asked. You have demonstrated exceptional leadership. Because we're not your weapons, Taiyang said calmly. We'll help train your forces. We'll share our tactics and knowledge. We'll stand beside you when danger comes, but we won't command your military. That's not why we wanted to join the council. Then why did you want to join? A council member asked. Hana stepped forward. To learn. To share. To be part of something bigger than ourselves. We told you that on the first day, and it's still true. What happened on Varos III wasn't about proving how strong we are. It was about helping people who needed help. Yuna added, We fought because fighting was necessary, not because we wanted to. The moment the battle ended, we became builders and healers again. That's who we are. Jinho looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. You saw our predator mode. You saw what we're capable of when we hunt. But that's only one part of us. He gestured to the screens on the walls, which now showed footage from the relief efforts on Varos III. The screens displayed Junho teaching colonial medical staff advanced trauma techniques, Suji helping repair communications equipment, Dongwu, the deadly sniper, reading stories to orphaned children, Nari coordinating food distribution, Yunji using her heavy weapon skills to clear rubble safely. "This is what humans really are," Jinho said. "We can hunt, we can kill, we can fight wars that last centuries, but we can also build, create, protect, love. We're not one thing, we're all things, depending on what the situation needs." A council member spoke up. "That versatility makes you unpredictable. How do we know you won't turn that predator mode on us someday?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Minho answered it. "Because you're not prey. You're not enemies. You're allies. And humans protect their allies with the same ferocity we hunt our enemies. That's the other thing about pack hunters. We're fiercely loyal to our pack." Taeyang nodded. "The Void Ravagers hurt people we had sworn to help. They became prey at that moment. You?" He looked around the chamber. "You're pack now, and we don't hunt pack." Thexra's voice was thoughtful. "So humans don't hunt fellow council members?" "Not unless you give us a reason," Yuna said bluntly. "And you'd have to work pretty hard to give us that reason. We prefer allies to enemies. Allies are more useful." The honesty was jarring, but it was also reassuring. Humans weren't promising to be harmless. They were promising to be loyal. There was a difference. Vorlon considered this. "The Council accepts humanity's terms. Full membership, with no military command obligations, but we do request joint training programs with human forces." "Agreed," Jinho said. "We'll share what we know. Hopefully, you'll never need to use it." "But if we do," Thexra said quietly, "we'll be ready." The formal session concluded, and council members began to mingle. Many approached the human delegation, some to congratulate them, others to ask questions. A few kept their distance, still processing what they had witnessed. One young council member, barely an adult by their species' standards, approached Jinho nervously. "Ambassador Park, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "When you were fighting, were you afraid?" Jinho smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, not the predatory one he had shown before. "Terrified. Every human there was afraid. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. But you fought anyway?" "That's what courage is," Hana interjected gently. "Not the absence of fear, the willingness to act despite it. We were afraid. We fought anyway because people needed us." The young council member nodded slowly, understanding. Across the room, Suji was surrounded by pilot trainees from various species, all asking about her maneuvers. She patiently explained G-force management and spatial awareness, her earlier combat edge completely gone. She looked like a friendly instructor, not the pilot who had flown through anti-aircraft fire without flinching. Junho was discussing medical techniques with council physicians. Dongwu was sharing tracking methods with security forces. Nari was explaining urban infiltration tactics for defensive purposes, she carefully noted. They had switched back, from warriors to teachers, from hunters to guardians. As the day wound down, Vorlan approached Jinho privately. "I have one final question. Something I need to understand." "Ask." "You could have killed all the Ravagers. It would have been easier, safer. Why show mercy?" Jinho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because mercy is what separates civilization from savagery. The Ravagers killed because they enjoyed it. We killed because it was necessary. The moment it stopped being necessary, we stopped. That's the difference. But they would have shown you no mercy." "I know. That's why we're not them." Jinho turned to look Vorlon in the eye. "You asked what makes humanity worthy of the Council. It's not our ability to fight. It's our ability to choose not to fight. We're dangerous because we're good at violence, yes, but we're trustworthy because we're even better at choosing peace." Vorlan was silent for a long time. Finally, his crystalline body glowed brighter, a sign of respect in his species. "I understand now. Humanity doesn't need to prove it's strong. It needs to prove it's wise." "And are we?" Jinho asked with a slight smile. "You saved 50,000 lives when every prediction said you would fail. You showed mercy to enemies who deserved none. You turned from warriors to healers in an instant." Vorlan's voice was warm. "Yes, Ambassador Park, you are wise, and we are grateful to have you as allies." As Jinho left the council chambers that day, he passed a holographic display showing news reports from across the galaxy. The story of humanity's intervention on Varos III had spread everywhere. The headlines varied: "Unknown species saves doomed colony," "200 warriors defeat 10,000 pirates, humanity's true nature revealed." But the one that caught his attention was simpler: "The galaxy has new guardians." Jinho smiled. Guardians. He liked that better than warriors or predators or any of the other terms being used. Behind him, his team gathered. They looked tired, but content. They had done what they came to do. They had saved lives. They had proven humanity's worth. And most importantly, they had done it without losing themselves. "Ready to go home?" Taiyang asked. "Actually," Jinho said, looking at reports from Varos III on his datapad, "I think we should stay a few more days. The colony still needs help rebuilding." No one objected. Of course they would stay, because that's what humans did. They fought when fighting was needed, and they built when building was needed. They were predators who chose to be guardians, and the galaxy would be forever changed because of it. Far away, in a dark corner of space, word of humanity's capabilities was spreading through the underworld. Pirate fleets and raider gangs heard the story and made a decision. Stay away from human allies. Don't threaten their pack, because if you did, they wouldn't fight you. They would hunt you. And humans, as the galaxy had learned, never stopped hunting until the prey was caught. The Galactic Council had witnessed humanity's predator mode unleashed in real time. They had seen the efficiency, the persistence, the deadly cooperation. But more importantly, they had seen humans choose to turn it off. And that choice, that ability to be both predator and guardian, made humanity the most valuable ally and the most feared enemy in the galaxy. The Council had invited a new member. They had gained a protector. And the Void Ravagers had learned a lesson that would echo across space for generations to come. Peaceful doesn't mean harmless. Remember that, and everyone could be friends. Forget it, and you became prey. The choice was theirs.